Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. To any 911 call operators, what is the funniest 911 call you've ever had? My mom was a 911 operator in the SF Bay Area in the 80s and 90s. I asked her to tell me a story to pass along, so here it is. I got a 911 call and I couldn't understand the caller. He was slurring his words. I knew he was calling from a bar, so I asked if he'd been drinking, and after asking many times I was able to determine that he wanted the police, not an ambulance. He wanted to file assault charges because a woman pulled his tongue. I asked, "How was she able to pull your tongue?" And he said, "Because I stuck it out at her." I had to keep muting the call because I was laughing so hard. Apparently, my supervisor went on to play this call in seminars for years and always got a ton of laughter. My department dispatches our area's animal control after hours. Once received a call from a guy freaking out because he caught a possum in his house. I asked him which room he was able to confine the animal, and he didn't tell me which room, but said he trapped it in a microwave. I had many questions. My kid worked for animal control. We were eating dinner and 911 dispatch calls him. Some panicked lady had called 911 about an owl in a tree that couldn't fly. It had been sitting in a tree for a half hour not moving. Of course, it was just before dusk and the owl was just waiting for dark so it could go hunt for dinner. Then there was the call about the one-legged duck at the park. He actually went to the park to make sure the duck wasn't injured, but realized after 15 minutes how silly he looked chasing after this one-legged duck that was outrunning him. A guy calls from a payphone to complain that he has a pipe wrench stuck in his butt and he needed an ambulance. He gave his location as the corner where the payphone was located. I asked him if he could tell me his appearance so I could be sure the medics could find him. His response? "Look dude, I'll be the only guy on the corner with a pipe wrench in his butt." I couldn't argue with that. In Michigan, we get hotels that put plastic swans with movable heads on their grass area to keep the Canadian geese away. Swans are really mean birds. Our ACOs get at least one call a day about those poor swans who have been there for days and haven't moved. Also had a resident call the ACO about a dead animal in his yard. Gets out there, typical suburban yard, mulch edging all the way around the fence, decorative plants here and there. Very uncluttered and neat, and small. He pointed to the dead animal and told her to take care of it. She walked over and didn't see anything. He called her an idiot and told her it was right in front of her. She picked up a decorative rock and turned around and said, "This?" He said, "Of course, what are you, some kind of moron?" She took it to him, telling him we're not allowed to dispose of dead wildlife, and he has to put it in his trash can, then laid the rock on the table in front of him. He called her an A and slammed the door. I was the caller. My deck had a couple unsafe spots. Normally, I avoided them just fine, but on this night, it had snowed. I stepped outside for just a minute because snow is very rare here. In doing so, I forgot about the unsafe spots. I stepped on one and my leg dropped through. As I fell, the boards on either side of my leg bent, but then retracted. The hole was smaller than my knee now. I couldn't get out. My girlfriend got me a coat to sit on because my butt was already starting to get cold and we called 911. Fortunately, I lived so close to the fire department, they were there in less than 3 minutes. I lived so close, had I Wilhelm screamed as I fell, they'd have likely heard me and arrived even faster. But 4 super strong firemen couldn't pull me out either, and I will add to that I think the first half of this sentence would be fairly humorous out of context. Anyway, one of them went to get a chainsaw out of the fire truck, and while we waited, I started singing The Pit from Parks and Rec, and they all joined in with me, and we had a good laugh about my situation. Other than having a sore purple leg for a few days, I was fine. I bought them all coffee a few days later. Super fun guys. 10 out of 10. Would definitely be rescued by them again. Not 911, but worked for animal control dispatch in a tourist town during my senior year in high school. Got a call from a lady that had called 911 previously and was told to call our number. picked up the phone to what sounded like a whole car of very panicked people all yelling at once. After asking what was wrong several times, I finally heard someone yell, "A deer! There's a deer in somebody's yard! Y'all gotta come pick it up!" Thinking it was a dead deer / roadkill, I said an animal control officer would come pick up the body soon. And a kid in the background starts bawling, saying the officer was going to kill it. So I paused for a second and asked, "Is the deer alive? What is it doing?" Someone far away from the phone yelled, "It's just sitting there in the yard." So I said, "Yeah, this is Texas. He lives there. Just don't touch him or get too close and y'all will be okay." Literally not even 5 minutes later, we get a call from another tourist about a deer chasing a family after they tried to take a selfie with it. To this day, I'm still not sure if it was the same family, but wow, I hope it was. Pre-911, before addresses were automatically shown, a couple heffing S knocked the phone off the nightstand and they had the police on speed dial. I thought she was being choked out, so I had the phone company track the address and send the cavalry. When they pounded on the front door, I heard the woman say, "Oh my god, there are 5 cop cars outside." The guy went downstairs and she picked up the phone and said, "Hello?" I said, "Hello ma'am, this is the police. Are you okay?" She said, "I'm fine. We were, busy." I said I had been listening for the last few minutes and she said, "Oh, we must have knocked the phone on the floor." The patrol guys told the guy they had to see her in person at the same time I was talking to her. She came downstairs so they could verify she was okay. They said she was pretty embarrassed. I used to do overnight security and have had to call 911 several times. My favorite was a gentleman who was obviously on something. Jittery, touching his face a lot, couldn't sit still. He tried to break into a house next to our campus, so I dialed 911 right then. As I'm giving them a description of what he is wearing, he starts stripping off his clothes, running around our campus. So I have to tell 911 operator, yeah, he butt naked in the middle of the street, laying down. I think he's doing the worm. We lost the guy on cameras, no clue where he is. 5 cop cars show up and they round up the only guy in our area with no shoes or a shirt. We went outside to give the cops a statement, and the guy is trying to convince the police that he is the one who called them to report someone stealing his shoes. The cops don't buy it for a second, but they let him go and he just runs off into the night, barefoot, no shirt. My late aunt once called 911 because my uncle wouldn't change the fan that was blowing on her. Because it was a small community in Michigan, the police laughed and came out and changed the fan. At a long-term care facility I worked at, one of our residents called 911 with a phone in her room because she didn't get ketchup with her lunch. Not kidding. The sheriff's office called back to let the nurses know what she'd done while I was standing right there. I've never laughed so hard at work. ER nurse here. I've had multiple patients call 911 from inside the ER for various reasons, slights and deficiencies, imagined and real. Examples. 1. Gentleman calls 911 from a room in the ER to tell the dispatcher that the doctor didn't believe his story about how the bottle of shampoo ended up in his rectum. He reported feeling, quote, disrespected. 2. An elderly, very confused woman called the police to report that we'd removed her bobby pins, thus letting her hair down in the course of preparing her for a CT scan of her head. Now her hair was a mess. 3. An individual well known to my institution would regularly call 911 to request ambulance transport from the lobby of the ER if directed there for triage, rather than being taken directly to a room. He'd also call 911 and request an ambulance to retrieve him as soon as he was discharged, usually to take him to a different hospital. 4. A very drunk woman called 911 from the bathroom of the ER to report being kidnapped from the party she'd been attending. Kidnapped by EMS, because she'd fallen into a window and hurt herself. Not an operator, but one time I went to a local library to do work as my home was filled with loud guests. I'm there for a couple hours, and I saw I had 25 minutes left. So I packed all my stuff up and brought it to the bathroom so I could take an S, not leave my stuff unattended and immediately just leave. Y'all, they locked me in. The librarians thought I left. The whole place was empty and dark. I walked right out the front door, which was locked, and triggered the alarm. Now, not to throw race into it, but I'm a big Latino man in a very white and upper class part of my state. So there was a real sense of fear I had, lol. I didn't want to be caught driving away from this scene in case any Karens were peeping out their windows. I had to call the cops on myself and explain that I got locked in the library while taking an S and the operator is dying. Cops show up and one of them goes, "So you like breaking in and taking S's, huh?" I went white as a ghost and started immediately bumbling my words. They brought the whole department out because they thought it was the funniest S. Thankfully, they were cool and just laughed at my dumb A. 112 from Europe. Man, I can't count them all. A man called to say he's wrestling with a deadly 10-meter, 32 to 33-foot snake in his backyard. He was very scared, and although I wasn't sure how did a 10-meter snake appear in his backyard, I sent the emergency to the police. They even called him back, but his father answered. The conversation was quite funny. "Hello, sir, police here. Is this Mr. Y?" His father. "Do you know where your son is?" "I don't know. Went to the backyard, I guess." "Maybe you should check on him. He might be fighting for his life against a deadly snake." Turned out, the guy was a little high and was wrestling with a bush. Dude wanted an ambulance because he needed to check if his girlfriend was pregnant or not. I heard her in the back saying, "But my period is over 2 months late." And he was like, No, a doctor needs to see it first." He didn't want to accept that it was not an emergency and couldn't understand how gynecologists usually aren't in an ambulance. Not sure if stories about people with mental illnesses should qualify, but there are some strong contenders, like the Queen of Hamsters, that's how she introduced herself, whose internet connection apparently was cut off because she did not like one of our politicians. But she does now, and she wants her internet back. A man wanted to prank his friend and hid in his kitchen behind sink. He couldn't get out, and fire brigade was needed to free him. Okay, 911 dispatcher / EMT1 here. So, while on light duty due to injury working rescue calls, I was trained to do 911 call intakes in Florida and worked midnight shifts. Always the craziest type of calls. I receive a call from a hysterical teenage boy. After getting him to calm down, he tells me that his friend has been swallowed up by a tube monster. So I asked him where this tube monster is at. "Are you there with the tube monster right now?" He says yes, he can hear his friend, but he is trapped. After finally being able to get the location of the caller, this is in the 90s, units are called to the scene: police, fire, and ambulance. Now, I've been on the phone for over 20 minutes with this young man and had him stay on the phone until help arrived. Then he says, "Man, my dad's gonna kill me." I asked him why. He said, "'Cause I promised him I wouldn't drop acid anymore and we've been tripping all night." So I had to get on the radio and advise crew coming in of the current mental status of both caller and victim. When crews arrived, they found the teen at the bottom of a hill stuck inside of an actual plastic tube they had been climbing inside of and rolling each other down said hill while tripping. The teen had to be extricated. The other teen was found by the payphone awaiting Dad's wrath. Thank you for watching. Guys, thank you for all the support and the likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.